Welcome to another episode of Casa Zoen. I'm your host, Roberto. My guest today is an actor, producer, CrossFit athlete, and trainer. You probably have seen him in shows and movies like The Guardian, Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., NCIS, among others. And he's got some exciting projects underway, and I look forward to talking to him about his journey in and out of Hollywood. Joining me is Brian Patrick Wade.
Yes.
Hey, man. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, I'm honored. I'm honored.
It's
Actually,
my honor.
I really am humbled. It's rare that I get to speak to your audience, man. I don't know that I get on many of these podcasts that are
awesome.
Bilingual, so I'm super pumped.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, and talking about bilingual, this multi-ethnic, what's happening in the United States, the diversity. I know that part of what you're promoting in this new film that I'm excited to hear about has some diversity in it that I didn't even know.
Yes.
So I just want to get started because since we're talking about the diversity, so your new project, which I'm excited. I watched a short film yesterday.
Oh, good.
Yeah, man. And
on Luso.tv?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And I gotta say, one of my favorite parts is when you're, I don't want to give it away, but it's there where this giant of a man is carrying the cannon, right?
Cannon,
dude, that's an awesome scene. So tell us a little bit about the project.
Well, what's crazy about that, dude, so the History Channel actually did, they I think this was only 3-4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. So the History Channel does this documentary about Peter Francisco. Well, actually about the strongest men in the world.
Oh, wow.
Throughout time.
Really? Okay.
And one of the men they featured was Peter Francisco.
Which is the movie's about this guy, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Who's Portuguese, by the way. So you talk about diversity and ethnicity.
Right.
So they gather at this time the strongest men in the world today, like all the strongman athletes, Brian Shaw, all these massive human beings, right?
Yeah.
And one of the feats of strength they ask them to do is pick up a cannon.
No way.
And nobody could do it until they dropped down to like this 300-pound, like smaller cannon. So as the story goes, Peter Francisco, because they were losing this fight and he didn't want the redcoats to get their artillery, this giant cannon. He goes over and picks this thing up and makes sure that he brings it back to the encampment, which is just wild, man.
That's crazy.
I mean, if you think about it, yes, he was a big guy, 6'6", 260 pounds.
Whoa!
But that's a large thing to do, right?
That is.
There's multiple eyewitnesses that recount this story. So
man,
it's
that's
wild.
Gotta be crazy.
Yeah.
So Luso is the name of the film, right?
Luso's the name. Well, it's a miniseries.
A miniseries.
Miniseries.
Okay.
Yeah. So Luso's the name of the film, and Luso refers to basically just a person of Portuguese descent.
Okay.
It started with the Lusitanians,
right.
who, by the way, gave the Roman Empire their biggest battle ever. Right. Like Lusitanians were known as just fierce warriors. But now it's kind of like just a person of Portuguese descent is what Luso refers to. So, and because he basically was dropped off on the shores of Virginia here at 5 years old, not even dropped off really, he washed up on shore.
Right. Was he abducted? Was that what happened?
So he comes from a wealthy, prominent family in Portugal. And during this time of unrest in Lisbon, there was a tyrannical king that took place and was under the impression that all of the wealthy families in the area were trying to kill him.
Oh, wow.
So he wages this war against all the wealthy families in the area, and one of which was Peter Francisco's family. So they fled to the Azores.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that island. Right?
Yeah, the Azores. So Peter was born on the island of Terceira, which back in that day was called the island of Jesus Christ, which is wild to think about, right? But it's known as Terceira today.
Yeah.
And Terceira was a big port island, and off the coast of this island is a rock called Split Rock, and it's right off the coast. You could swim to it. However, a lot of pirates would kind of hide out in this rock because you couldn't see if they were behind it, and it has this giant split in the middle of it. So if they were kind of tucked back in there, you couldn't really see them. So on the day of Pentecost on the island is a big festival, lots of people out in the streets, vendors partying. And so on the day of Pentecost, he gets kidnapped by slave pirate. Well, we actually don't know if it was slave pirates or if it was retribution from the king. We have no idea really, but he was kidnapped. We have no idea where they were taking him. However, as the story goes, there was a giant storm that came up and the ship fell apart, and he washes up on the shores of Virginia. And fishermen find him. They have no idea what to do with him. He can't speak English.
Yeah.
He's Portuguese.
Right.
So they take him to the local orphanage. where he gets tucked away, and as fate would have it, a wealthy, prominent judge by the name of Judge Winston ends up purchasing him and several other kids to work his plantation. And Judge Winston just happened to be the uncle of James Madison, who happened to be best friends with Patrick Henry and George Washington and founding fathers.
Yeah.
So as the story goes, Peter grows up on this plantation. By the time he's 16 years old, this guy's 6'6", 260 pounds.
Man, that's one big guy. Back then,
it's a big guy now.
He's a big guy now.
But back then, the average man was 5'8", right? So he was giant. For his day.
Yeah.
So of course the revolution starts to happen, and the red coats are coming over, and things are getting real heated. And at this point, Peter was put in basically in charge of what would be known as like security detail for Judge Winston.
Yeah.
He would basically ride him into town, take him to dignitary meetings, whatever. Just a big guy, had him with him, and anyways, he goes to and here's the famous speech: "Give me liberty or give me death." Well, as things start to heat up, Washington, Madison, Patrick, they go to his uncle and like, "Hey, listen, like we have a bunch of farmers here that are trying to fight these well-trained redcoats. And you have a giant human working your kid. Can we borrow him?" Right? And at first he was like, "No, we'll be fine. He's here to work. That's it." And then of course things heat up, and Judge Winston grants him his freedom to go fight. And he ends up becoming one of the most famous private soldiers in all of the American Revolution. And we know nothing about him as American citizens.
I was just going to say, I haven't really heard of him. You know?
Nobody is. Well, what's funny is I just did, the interview with Terry. And I'm talking to a bunch of Virginians, and nobody knew anything about him, which is wild. Because especially here in the state of Virginia, this is where he was raised. But he also served in the Virginia Senate here.
Whoa.
So he served in the Virginia Senate and later on in life. When he passed away, the state of Virginia actually paid for his funeral, and to this day it's the largest or longest funeral procession ever held, still to this day. And Virginia celebrates Peter Francisco Day.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So if you look all this up, man, it's true. There's also a Peter Francisco Award. The first recipient was John F. Kennedy. So there's all these crazy things, man. I mean, there's 6 monuments that stand in his honor up and down the East Coast for his just insane like abilities and bravery and the battles that he fought, one of which being the Battle of Guilford Courthouse. But one of the monuments actually has a plaque at the bottom of it with a quote, a direct quote from then General George Washington, which became our president, right? It said, "Without him, we would have lost 2 pivotal battles, and perhaps with it, the war and our freedom."
That's
talking about Peter Francisco, right? So had this guy not been involved, the war could have gone very differently. So the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, which was a very pivotal battle, he was said to have killed 11 redcoats with this big 6-foot broadsword that George Washington made for him because regular infantry swords were too small. They're like a toothpick in his hand, which is what he said.
Oh, man.
So he has this big 6-foot broadsword made. And at that particular battle, eyewitnesses recount that he killed 11 men with that sword by himself. And kind of like everyone would see this happening on the battlefield and they just turned and ran.
Whoa.
So the stories, man, are wild. But what's more important about it is he was a Christian.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how did that happen? How did faith become a part of his life?
So I don't know how much, how much of it is actually true fable. As the story goes, he grew up on this plantation. There was an older kind of, I guess, sage slave that had been there a long time who was an old African-American who pastor-ish, I guess, but he led, the hush-hush, church for all the slaves. And I'm assuming that's how he found Christ. But you're talking about a guy in at least in our series that I want to give my son who's 2.
Yeah.
And you have 2 kids.
Yeah.
Two
boys.
2 boys.
2 boys. Yeah.
2 boys. So your sons, right?
Yep.
I grew up watching Rocky. Right. And Rambo. All great films, great characters. However, I want to give my son a real hero to look up to. And it doesn't, even if it wasn't me playing him, I would get behind this because Peter Francisco is, I want to portray what real masculinity is. And that real masculinity is not toxic. Real masculinity protects, it provides, it stands over, it watches over, it makes the right decisions, no matter the circumstance. And no matter how tough that is, it's going to choose right. And that's what real masculinity is. And that's how Peter is going to be portrayed in our miniseries. That's how we believe he was. And that's what we want to show the world. And we want to also teach our young kids what this country was founded on. Biblical principles that our forefathers needed to be written into not only our Declaration of Independence, but just the embedding in the floor of building a nation to keep his eyes fixed on the Lord. And that's what we want to point kids to, man, is teaching them the history of this great nation through the eyes of a giant hero.
Oh man, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I can tell that your excitement and part of the reason that you're drawn to this is because you yourself emulate those values. You have those values yourself.
Yes. And I can't say that I'm perfect all the time, right?
None of us are, man. None of us are.
Yeah.
But that's what you're striving. You're a follower of Christ.
That's right.
And I'm really curious to know just, how has your journey as an actor, how have you made that decision? Because it's tough to be a man of integrity and to choose the right thing with all these pressures that you see in Hollywood. And you've been an actor for over 20 years, right?
Yeah.
How have you done that?
God's grace, dude. There's been multiple times, and I get a little emotional about this because there's been multiple times where I wondered, if I was showing Christ enough. There were times when I doubted if me being even in the industry was something that I should be doing. And there were certainly roles. There's not a role out there that I've taken, I don't think, that I've ever regretted. But what it did was certainly shape my desire for roles. Knowing that I was a Christian, there were certainly roles that I told my team along the years that I didn't want to audition for. And it didn't really go into specifics. It's just I don't want to be a part of some of the things that happen. And that's just a personal choice. I know other wonderful Christian actors who don't, who just it's just work. I need to work. It's just work. And that's okay too. Whatever their choice is, I just always I struggled with that really, really bad. I did two roles that one of which was in a show called 2.5 Men. Which was amazing. And I loved working with Charlie Sheen. Charlie was, at the time when I worked with him, was just a consummate professional. He was wonderful to work with. We had a great time. But at the end of it, I played a character that saved Charlie's life. I was a lifeguard by his beach house. And it was super fun, right? 2.5 is a comedy. And I played this gay lifeguard, but you don't know that until the very end. I ask him out on a date. Like I save him, go into his house, and then I come back at the end of the episode and to check on him. But I end up asking him out, and it's just tongue in cheek, right? Like we go out, and but after that, I was like, you know what? I've done this now, and I don't want to take that any further. So since then, I haven't even auditioned for those roles.
Wow. And that's cost you. There's talking about choosing the right thing for you, your conviction, your conscience, what God is leading you. That's required a sacrifice.
100%. Oh yeah. There's definitely been things that I've missed out on or that I just chose not to be a part of because of it.
How have you seen God? Because I really do believe that even though there's a cost, I know God honors that. He honors that when he's steering you, when he's guiding you and he's leading you and you make that difficult choice. I know that he honors. Have you seen him honoring you?
Yes. And I'll say this, it's not always been in the film industry.
Whoa.
So dude, I don't even know when it changes, to be honest with you, because I'm not there yet. Like I'm still hustling, right? Like I don't get offers. I still audition and pray to God that if it's my job, I get it. And some of my best work you'll never see because they're just auditions and that's as far as they got.
Yeah.
Right. But where God has really come through, especially, man, since COVID, because COVID happened and things changed dramatically.
Yeah.
I left LA in 2017 just because I needed a change. And up to when I moved, I hadn't worked in almost a year.
Whoa.
It'd been a while.
Wow.
And luckily, God had blessed me with other opportunities in the health and fitness industry, so I was able to still make a living. And so you talk about honoring that. So that kept me afloat, and it's also another passion of mine. So it was great.
Yeah.
But 8 months to a year had gone by, and I was like, man, what am I doing here? Like I miss my family for one. I'm kind of over being in LA. I need a change. So I had decided to move back to the East Coast.
Okay.
And what was funny about that was I was like, God, listen, I don't know if I'm still supposed to act anymore. I haven't worked in a year. Yeah. There were so many moments in my career where I was like, this is it. Now I'm going to just keep working.
Yeah.
And it would happen for a little bit and then nothing, right? Like you talk about peaks and valleys, man, like the acting, the industry is full of them.
Yeah.
And not to mention, you do work with guys.
Yeah.
And specifically, I did a mini series called Generation Kill. I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but this is very important.
Yeah.
So I did a mini series for HBO called Generation Kill, and it was a huge. Every actor in Hollywood wanted this job, and I was fortunate enough to get one of the roles, and it was a lead role, and I worked with a lot of amazing actors on this film, and we were all like, I wouldn't say rookies in the business, but it was all of us. It was all of our biggest break at that moment in time.
Oh wow.
Including Michael Kelly, Alexander Skarsgård, Kellen Lutz, like all of these guys that I worked with, John Huertas.
Okay.
Just amazing actors. And so we get this role. We live in Africa for 9 months shooting this miniseries, which was amazing.
Wow.
So we come back from this and all of us are like, great, this is it. Like we're all gonna just start working.
Yeah.
And I got a pilot pretty shortly afterwards. Some other guys got some pilots. Mine didn't go. Some of the other guys they got on pilots, they took off.
Yeah.
Alexander Skarsgård, man, he blew up after that. As soon as we got home, he landed a role on True Blood.
Okay.
And then he's an A-list actor, right? So you have all these moments in the industry where you're like, this is it. I'm not gonna have to audition anymore. Or if I do, it's just gonna be kind of like, we just want to hear you read it. Here's the job. And then nothing, right? So you have these giant peaks and valleys. So I would have never lasted as long as I did had it not been for my foundation as a Christian. Not in a million years, because the only solid thing I would have sometimes was Christ. That was it, man. Yeah. And it's hard. Yeah. So
do you think God has protected you in just over the years, because it seems like a disappointment not getting that. I can feel the frustration.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, do you feel there's like God's sovereign hand protecting you from things that maybe you don't even realize? To
answer your question, yes, I'm very thankful in hindsight on a lot of these, what I call false starts. As disappointing as they were then, I'm sure the Lord had saved me from disaster. Yeah. And looking back on it now, where I am in life now in my 40s, and I have a wife and 3 wonderful kids, and the stuff that I want to do now is so much different than what I would have done. Not even that I didn't even have a clue really what I wanted to do back then. It was just I just wanted to work. Yeah. So I'm thankful now that as I continue to work, that I'm a little bit more, I guess, picky, if I can be, and that my kids will have something that is cool for them to watch. And, going back to the values that you were talking about. That's right. Modeling for them. Doesn't it change you as a dad? I'm a young dad and I have young kids, and I just think of, your choices. You're thinking now, what am I representing for them? How am I modeling? Being a God-fearing man. It changes you. Yes, it does. Absolutely. It 100% does. And I tell you what, man, there is nothing that will put a magnifying glass on your flaws quicker than kids. Yes. Or a wife, to be honest. Like, it's like, if you want to know where you're failing, man, have children, and they will point it out really quickly. Not even through words, just through watching them, and like, wow, like,
Yeah.
I don't want them to do that. I can't be doing that because they're sponges, man, and they pick everything up.
Yeah, man, I can relate. I can relate to that. I had a guest here, Jared Lopes, before you a couple of days, and we were talking about the same thing. And I was telling him that I felt that marriage is like the factory where sanctification is produced.
Yeah.
But having kids is like the meat grinder.
Yes.
You know, where that holiness and maturing happens.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. There are things that I'm like, I didn't even know I had like that like impatient issue or anger issues.
Dude.
Like I thought I was a pretty nice guy, you know, like, and then kids, you know, they'll
the stress of kids and dude, the stress of just being, I feel like a dad in today's society, man, at least a God-fearing man, where you want to provide and you want to, you know, be a loving father, and you want to show up and you want to be present.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and it takes a lot of energy. And like you said, it takes a lot of patience.
Yeah.
And dude, that is one thing where I definitely realized I am lacking. Like when I had kids, like you before, I was like, pretty like laid back, even keeled dude.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have kids, man, you're like, wow, I can fly off the handle pretty quick.
Yep.
And I need to watch it when I do, because I can get aggressive and probably pretty scary looking to a little 2-year-old, right?
Especially someone like you.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's
Yeah, man.
but it's good. It's good.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
For sure. Let me ask you really quick. I know your time is precious, and I want to thank you for being here. But your passion, you mentioned another one of my passions is fitness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really curious. There's a connection. I'm sure there's got to be a connection between how you discipline yourself, your projects. You know, how you're a CrossFit athlete, right?
Yep.
And so your faith. I think there's a correlation there. There's a connection there.
There
Have you
is.
found that as you focus on that, it helps your other discipline, your physical body, your spiritual? Does that help doing both? Is there a connection there, do you feel?
Yeah, I firmly believe that our bodies are the temple of God, right? Like, and we are. I tell my athletes, so I own a CrossFit gym as well,
cool.
And I tell my athletes, and especially some of my guy friends who I work out with, or family members or whoever, because I especially at my age now, people are like, why do you work out so hard? And there are more days now where I don't want to work out than where I do.
Yeah.
But I choose to, one, because I have young kids and I want to be able to keep up with them.
I hear you.
But two, because I feel like if this starts to go, there's so many other areas in my life that start to fall apart, that start to unravel. And it starts with just discipline. It's just discipline, right? The difference between a pro and a rookie is when a pro doesn't want to do something, he still does it. He still shows up. He still does it, regardless of the feeling.
Wow.
And that's the difference. And I like to teeter. I have this kind of phrase where I like to teeter on the edge of being civilized and staying a savage. And I do. And I tell my guy friends this. I said, listen, man, here's the thing. It's like, you think that, you know, you're playing golf 3 days a week, your marriage is great, your kids are doing okay, but you're 40 pounds overweight, right? Or you're not feeling great about yourself and you've kind of let yourself go a little bit. And then all of those things that you thought were in line start to unravel. And it's like, what do you go back to? How do you recenter yourself? And for me, it's always been, if I can discipline myself to keep this in check, I'm much stronger in other areas of my life, much stronger.
Yeah.
And it flows over into everything I do.
That's right.
And it's not just for me, it's for my kids, it's for my wife. I'm a much better husband when I've worked out. I'm a much better father when I've worked out. I'm a much better leader. I can articulate things much better. I have a clearer vision. And especially right now, my time frame of alone time is very limited. So right now, every day of the week, pretty much with the exception of Sunday, I'm up at 4 a.m.
Whoa.
So I get up at 4 a.m. And I just kind of started this tradition because I was having a hard time with my devotions at 4, kind of taking it in because I was tired.
Yeah, of course.
So what I started doing was I listened to a couple praise and worship songs in the morning while I'm drinking my coffee. Yeah. And it's helped me tremendously before I get into my devotions. But I will start the day there.
That's
at
awesome.
4 a.m. I start the day there. And then 10 after 5, I'm out the door to go work out or train. Yeah. And it just kind of sets the mood for the day.
Yeah,
so, and like I said, though, I mean, it's not to say that I'm perfect and every day that I work out's a great day after that. There's definitely days where, man, I fall short and jeez.
Yeah, man.
Like we talked about having kids, they'll point it out.
For sure.
And I fall short often, but that it's the journey and not staying down, and the next day getting up and trying to do it a little bit better the next day.
Yeah, man, that consistency, that's so good. That's so good. Well, you look in great shape, man.
Oh, thank you.
Like I have a role model to look up to.
That's right.
I try to work out,
Yeah, good.
I've been doing pickleball recently.
Oh, okay.
And man, that's a workout, especially with this heat. Oh,
the
man.
pickleball dude is taking the nation by storm.
It is, man.
They're putting up pickleball courts everywhere.
Yeah, it's fun, man. You should check it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I definitely like to lift as well, but yeah, pickleball has been fun. But yeah, I totally agree with you that it just sets. I actually worked out this morning, and just your brain, just you have clarity and just the stress, and even that impatience or that kind of frustration that you feel as a guy sometimes, that you just want to, like, it kind of helps to release that
100%.
energy.
That's right.
So yeah, man. So going back just quickly, just to wrap it up, where can people find out more about Luso and just to get more information and support what you're doing?
Yeah. So luso.tv is our website. You can view the entire trailer or short film on our website. We also have a club called Club 83 on there that you can join. And Club 83 is a movement. We're trying to start this movement. So there's I guess a poll taken, I forget which magazine now. Anyways, 83% of Americans don't know the basics of the American Revolution or our founding fathers or how this country was founded, right? So we started Club 83 to turn the tide by July 4th, 2026, which is our nation's 250th anniversary, which is right around the corner if you think about it.
Yeah.
To turn the tide of our nation where 83% of Americans do know about the American Revolution and our founding fathers and what this country was founded on and biblical principles.
Yeah.
So go check out luso.tv. Join Club 83 if you're so inclined, so you can support Luso and us getting this miniseries off the ground.
And watch you lift the cannon.
That's right.
Because you're playing Peter Francisco, man.
That's right.
And you're pretty close to his size.
That's right.
You're like 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah, I'm 6'4.5". So I'm there.
They picked the right person for this.
Thank you.
Thing. Yeah, that's awesome, man.
And just another tidbit about PF. So. He was on a stamp, a postal stamp, the bicentennial stamp.
I saw that, yeah.
So it's just another thing. It's so wild, man. Like that we don't know about him as a country. But in the short film that you'll see on luso.tv, it ends with, and I'll spoil it a little bit, but it ends with me picking up this cannon. Yeah. And then it kind of blurs into this graphic image of a new postal stamp. Yeah, the new postal stamp. Which we're hoping we can pull off as a new actual stamp, July 4th, 2026.
Oh, dude, that'd be cool, man.
Recreate this new stamp, yeah. So
that's really cool.
That was the whole purpose behind that.
Oh, I get it, because I watched it. Yeah, when you pick up the cannon.
Yeah.
Dude, that's exciting, man.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm grateful for what you're doing. I'm excited. I admire your courage to choose what you're doing, because it would have been easier to give in to some of those pressures, and so I admire your courage, and I pray that God bless you and this exciting journey. I look forward to watching the miniseries.
Yes, thank you.
I can definitely see it. As I was watching the short film, I was like, man, this is gonna be cool, really cool. So
thank you.
Yeah, man, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
and
thanks
God bless
for having
you.
me, man. Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for watching or hearing this episode of Casa Zoen. Let me ask you a favor. Please share this episode with a friend, with a family member. Also, if you can, leave a comment, leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It's a way for us to stay connected, and it's always an encouragement to me and the team to hear how these episodes are blessing your life. And I hope to see you again in another episode of Casa Zoen.